One inning, one single inning, and the entire city of Toronto held its breath. Welcome back to Blue Jays Focus. And I am going to be honest with you right out of the gate. Sunday's game against the Pittsburgh Pirates was not just a loss. It was the kind of afternoon that tests your faith as a Blue Jays fan, not because of the score, not because of the pitching, but because of what happened in that fifth inning. Because in the span of about 15 minutes, this franchise watched both its ace and its offensive cornerstone walk off that field with injuries. Dylan Cease, left hamstring discomfort, gone after 4 2/3 innings. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., right elbow contusion from a hit by pitch, gone moments later. Same inning. 2 of the most important players on this roster, out. Now before we spiral, and I know some of you are already spiraling, I can feel it through the screen, let me walk you through exactly what happened, what the updates say, and what this actually means for this team going forward. Because there is a difference between bad news and catastrophic news. And right now, we are not in catastrophic territory, we are in concerning territory, and there is a meaningful distinction. Stay with me. Let's start with Dylan Cease, because that is the one that I think genuinely scares Blue Jays fans more, and it should, based purely on the timing and what this man means to this rotation. Before Sunday's game even started, Cease was leading the American League with 84 strikeouts and 57.1 innings pitched, a 3.05 ERA, 3 wins. One of the top favorites in AL Cy Young conversations. This is the man the Blue Jays paid 7 years and $210 million to anchor this staff, and everything we were told he would be in Toronto, he has been. Every single outing, he has been worth every penny. He was dealing on Sunday too. 4 2/3 innings, 2 runs, 4 hits, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts. The swing and miss was there, the stuff was there, and then he started shaking his leg between pitches. That is the part that stops your heart as a fan. You watch your ace standing on the mound between deliveries, shaking his leg like something does not feel right, and then John Schneider and head athletic trainer Jose Ministral are walking out to the mound, and you already know what is coming. Cease stayed in long enough to retire Spencer Horwitz, and then he handed the ball to Mason Fluharty and walked off. The official diagnosis from the club was mild left hamstring discomfort. Mild. That word matters. They did not say strain, they did not say tear, they said mild discomfort, and the early indications from the testing they ran were described as positive. Schneider himself said the early testing seemed pretty positive. And then, and this is the part I want you to hold on to, Cease told his own manager that he wants to make his next start. Think about that for a second. The pitcher came out of the game, got evaluated, and his message to John Schneider was, "I want to be on the mound Friday against Baltimore." That is not a man who felt something serious pop. That is not a man who felt his season falling apart under his feet. That is a competitor who felt tightness, got cautious, and is already thinking about his next outing. Now, the MRI is happening, and that is the next chapter of this story. The scan will tell us everything we need to know. If it comes back clean, and the early signs suggest it might, then this becomes a scare Toronto survived and nothing more. If there is structural damage, then the conversation changes dramatically. But right now, the information we have is more reassuring than it is alarming. And I want to be real with you about the context here. Hamstring injuries are not like elbow injuries in baseball. With pitchers, arm injuries carry a different level of fear because the mechanics of throwing put such extreme stress on the elbow and shoulder. A hamstring issue for a pitcher, especially one caught early when the discomfort is still mild, gives you a much more optimistic recovery window when managed correctly. The Blue Jays pulled him immediately. They were not going to let him push through it. That caution is actually the right call, and it reflects how seriously this organization treats the health of a $210 million investment. Cease has also been one of the most durable starters in baseball. Over the past 5 years, he has made at least 32 starts every single season. In this era of innings limits and load management across the league, that kind of durability is genuinely rare. His track record tells you that this is not a fragile pitcher. This is a pitcher who competes, finishes his work, and shows up, which is exactly why him walking off a mound after 4 innings matters, because it is so out of character. He felt something real enough to leave, and the team was smart enough to take him out of there. We get the MRI results. We find out where this stands. And until then, Cease is still scheduled to start Friday against Baltimore. The plan is in place. Now we wait. Now let's talk about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Because what happened in that bottom half of the 5th inning was genuinely scary to watch in real time. Mitch Keller, 92-mile-per-hour sinker. Right on the inside of Guerrero's unprotected elbow, and Guerrero's reaction told you immediately that it was not a graze. It was direct contact on the bone. He screamed. He walked right past Schneider and the trainer and went straight to the dugout. Did not stop. Did not look back. Keegan Matheson, who covers this team for MLB.com, wrote in real time that this day had turned into a nightmare for the Blue Jays. And in that moment, he was right. But here is where the news gets significantly better. The x-rays came back negative for a fracture, no break. The official diagnosis is a right elbow contusion. meaning a bruise, a painful, uncomfortable, potentially tender bruise on a very sensitive piece of anatomy, but a bruise, not a fracture, not structural damage. Guerrero himself spoke after the game and described feeling numbness in his arm. His middle finger and his pinky finger went numb after impact. That sounds alarming, and it is uncomfortable to hear, but numbness from a direct blow to the elbow, hitting what most people casually call the funny bone, is a known and common physiological response to that specific type of impact. The ulnar nerve runs directly through that area of the elbow, and a hard enough hit to that spot will absolutely cause temporary numbness and tingling in the fingers. It does not necessarily indicate nerve damage or anything structural. Guerrero said it himself after the game. When that happened, I thought it was worse than this. Thank God nothing major. Those were his words. His own assessment, standing in the aftermath of the scariest moment of his afternoon, was that he got away with it. And Schneider backed that up. The manager said he could see Guerrero returning to the lineup as early as Monday against Miami, depending on how he felt after a night's rest. Day to day, not week to week, not injured list, day to day. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that any injury to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is something you brush off lightly. This is the man the Blue Jays built their lineup around. This is the player the franchise signed to a massive long-term deal. He leads this team in on-base percentage. His bat, his presence in the middle of that order, his ability to anchor the lineup and give every hitter around him better pitches to see. That is not replaceable on a Tuesday against Miami. But the information we have right now points towards this being a painful day rather than a lost season, and you hold on to that until you have reason to believe otherwise. Now let's zoom out, because both of these injuries did not happen in isolation. They happened to a team that is already carrying 13 players on the injured list. 13. Shane Bieber, 60-day IL, right elbow inflammation. Jose Berrios, IL, elbow, and with surgery potentially still on the table depending on how the stress fracture responds. Bowden Francis, done for the season after Tommy John surgery. Cody Ponce, ACL surgery, season over. Max Scherzer, forearm tendonitis, on the IL with a return timeline that remains uncertain. Lazaro Estrada, shoulder impingement. Anthony Santander, shoulder surgery, out. That is what this team was already managing before Sunday happened, before Cease's hamstring, before Guerrero's elbow. The Blue Jays were already operating a rotation on life support, patching together a pitching staff through a combination of depth, creativity, and sheer resilience. And yet they are 25 and 28. Not good, but not dead either. Not with Dylan Cease as healthy as he has been until Sunday. Not with Guerrero in the lineup every day contributing at an above-average clip. This team has stayed afloat because its best players have been healthy enough to show up. And Sunday was the first real moment where you could feel the floor shifting. This is why the MRI matters so much. Not just for fantasy baseball purposes, not just for the rotation depth chart, but for the entire narrative of this season. If Cease comes back Friday and takes the ball against Baltimore, this team exhales and keeps fighting. If that MRI reveals a grade 2 or grade 3 hamstring strain and Cease is looking at 4 to 6 weeks, then Toronto is in a genuinely difficult position. Because the names behind him in that rotation right now are not going to hold the fort for 6 weeks against a competitive American League schedule. You already know what they are dealing with in that pitching staff. The cupboard is not empty. Yariel Rodriguez has been pitching, Kevin Gausman is still in the mix as a veteran presence, and there is depth in AAA Buffalo. But none of those options are Dylan Cease. None of them are the guy you gave $210 million to. None of them put fear into opposing lineups the way Cease does when he is fully locked in. So, yeah, the MRI is the whole story right now. And every Blue Jays fan is waking up this morning waiting on that scan. And while we wait on that MRI, let me give you the honest answer to the question that is sitting in every Blue Jays fan's head right now. What does this rotation look like if Cease misses time? It is not pretty. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Kevin Gausman is a veteran who has been around this organization, knows the culture, and can eat innings. But Gausman in 2026 is not Gausman at the peak of his San Francisco years. He can give you quality starts, but he is not the frontline stopper who makes you forget about the guy who just went to the IL. Yariel Rodriguez is an interesting piece. Electric stuff, genuine upside, but not yet the reliable weekly presence you need from a number 2 starter in a pennant race. He has flashed the ability. The question is whether he can sustain it across a stretch of starts where the pressure is elevated. Beyond those two, you are talking about mix and match. Depth options, AAA call-ups, spot starters, the kind of roster management that burns out a bullpen in 6 weeks if you're not careful, and the Blue Jays bullpen is already stretched thin from everything that has happened to this staff since opening day. The rotation math only works when Cease is in it every 5 days. He has been the load-bearing wall of this entire pitching structure. With Berrios on the IL, Bieber on the 60-day, Francis done for the year, Scherzer dealing with a forearm, and Ponce gone, Cease has been the one constant the team could point to and say, we have one elite arm and he shows up every start. Losing that for any length of time does not just affect the rotation. It affects the bullpen usage, the game plans, the win expectancy on any given day. This is not doom, it is context, and context is what this channel is always going to give you.